What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are driving a 1992 Dodge Stealth RT. It's a bit of an oddball car. It is not stock. We have the owner, Dan, with us. Dan, give us a brief overview. What has been done to this car? Give us the quick version of the story.
This thing sat off the road for about 20 years. Bought it about 2 years ago off Facebook Marketplace, and it had rod knock back in about 2005, 2006. Owner basically abandoned the whole project, but he didn't want to get rid of it. Sat in his driveway for about 20 years. My buddy, I should say, Keegan Billerbeck, absolutely knows these cars like the back of his hand. He's had a few of them, and he said, oh yeah, we can build a new motor for this thing. We basically accumulate a lot of parts because you can't like go to a parts store and buy a lot of this stuff. We put heads on it, bearings, we did MSD ignition, brand new fuel system, squeezing a little more boost out of the turbos. Normally right around stock's about 6 to 7 pounds. We're pushing about 12 per turbo. It's making roughly about 440, 450 horse.
Is that wheel or crank, you think?
That's about crank.
Okay, that's a pretty healthy number for this vehicle.
Yeah, it weighs about 3,700 pounds. It's all-wheel drive, rear steering, active aero. Granted, some of the components don't really work. The active steering is kind of intermittent. It did have active exhaust. Right now that has been deleted because we did do an aftermarket exhaust on it. But it's overall a really great little runner. I've put about 1,700 miles on it since we put it back on the road about a year ago. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited to drive this today. We drove an NA1 a couple of years ago, and I like that one, but the turbo has always been a bit of a curiosity for me. And you never see them in this kind of condition. Like even this one sort of driver's quality is kind of rare for these. I mean, most of them, especially in the north, they're all rusted out and they're just no longer on the road. So it's a pretty nice example. Ready to hop on the road and give this thing a drive. So clutch all the way to the floor.
Yes. Sure it's out of gear, yeah.
Okay, and then reverse.
Yeah, it's not a short throw. It's.
I don't mind this at all. This is totally okay. Oh, there we go.
All the way.
Ah! That was funny. You knew that was going to happen too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was at the bottom all the way. Nope, just that tiny little bit more.
About the engine is we did the Evo 10 injectors and lifters, so that's straight out of like a later style Evo.
Okay, is that tachometer right?
The tach, yes.
That strikes me as very loud at 2,000 RPM.
Yes. Yeah, so there's a few little things that I still have to address, like I think there's a wheel bearing that's starting to go bad in the front.
Yeah.
But other than that, it didn't start doing that until about 100 miles ago.
You know, it's an old car. You know, old cars, they have their quirks, and you know, there's never a perfect old car. They're always just kind of a little imperfect. And that's kind of what makes them fun. So right off the rip, I'm surprised at how big this thing feels.
Yeah, it's a pretty big car, but it's not very heavy. Like it weighs as much as like a Mustang or a Camaro.
No, it's like, it's not terribly heavy compared to modern cars. I mean, back in the day it was kind of heavy when everything had nothing in it, but you know, by modern standards it's not terribly heavy, but it just feels really GT car-esque, which is what it was. I mean, it was a GT car.
Yeah, so yeah, one has the Grand Touring cars, they're especially, you know, Japan kind of really hit their market pretty right when they're trying to develop a car in Japan. There's about 25 to 30 people in one room, on one car. So
and they're all constantly checking and balancing each other out.
That's how you get all-wheel drive. That's how you get the rear steering. That's how you get all this stuff.
All the things that are done to this car. You said these are stock brakes?
Yeah, these are stock brakes. Like I said, I have not touched it had a brake pedal when I got it out, and once we started driving around, the thing felt great, brakes felt great, everything started coming around, but at this point we need to go through the brake system, the front suspension, everything else like that.
right? The whole rest of the car now that the engine's sorted, you know, it's okay, that's good. Makes sense. I will say the steering does feel kind of GT car-esque, but the suspension feels a lot more connected than I was expecting. And I do like that. You know, it feels a little while away, but also, I mean, it's an old car, and I'm sure a lot of it, I mean, like you said, untouched. The car sat for, you know, however many years. You know, it's not that bad. That engine sounds great. I love when you do that too. The whole whoop.
Yeah, it's lifts off.
Yeah, the gearing's really long too. All kind of in line with, you know, a GT car. I gotta say, this thing feels great. Alright, got a bit of a straight. I'm gonna drop to second and see what we got. I think the tack is reading low.
Probably is. It's, like you said, there's some quirks with this car.
Ah, it's okay. Oh, I love it. Shifter feels great too. It's got that classic 90s sort of, you know, a little bit of initial vagueness, but once you kind of grab the gear, it engages really nicely. I like that shifter a lot. You really feel the turbo lag on that when you shift gears. That's so cool though. It's one thing too I always notice about old turbo cars is how much turbo noise they have. Like you get into the pedal and it's right in your face. It's glaring at you. Yes, I have a turbocharger. And new cars, they try so hard to remove you from the turbo and refine the engine note and get the exhaust in there. But in the 90s especially, I think they were just unapologetic about, you know, how much turbo noise you got.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I know.
Yeah, that whistle is getting a little. It's coming from the brakes.
Coming from what?
Yeah, it's definitely coming from the brakes.
Okay, should I be concerned at all?
No, it's
Okay.
pretty normal. Audio might be a little bad.
That's okay. I've been feeling out the pedals throughout this drive just to make sure.
That's crazy.
You really feel that all-wheel drive too. It surges you out of corners, gives you so much confidence. That was what they were doing in the 90s, all-wheel drive. I mean, this was sort of the Mitsubishi and Chrysler, Dodge, their attempt at going after the Supra, or I guess more specifically the Skyline GTR, just not in the United States, at least at that time. You know, big GT car, lots of power, lots of tech. You know, it was a very expensive car, and it was supposed to, it had everything, right? You know, 1992, there was nothing else that drove like this in the United States.
Nope.
Wow. That is a fast rolling to 60.
Yeah.
Woo!
Probably about 4.5, 5 seconds, 0 to 60.
Yeah.
Realistically.
No, that's quick. All right, try second gear here. Second gear is tall, so I don't know if I felt the rear steering at all. I guess it would be hard to tell because I've never driven one that I knew was for sure working. But the car feels really planted in corners, really stable. That all-wheel drive, it just, I don't know, puts down the power really well. 450 horsepower seems like a very good number for this car.
Yeah.
It's
from stock, like I said, they make about 320, making about 5 to 7 pounds per turbo.
Yeah.
But once you crank these up just a little bit, yeah, it really opens it up.
Yeah, agreed. And some cars, people throw a lot of power at and it kind of ruins the way it drives, but this, I don't think at all. I think it fully enhances the way it drives. 450 horsepower, how this car feels right now, it just feels great. It has, between the all-wheel drive and the suspension in the car and just the way it kind of feels, drives, it's able to put down the power really well and give the driver a lot of confidence, which is cool. Even with a little bit of the body roll still, when you're coming out of corners, I mean, it just sends you right through them, and it's awesome. As far as driver inputs go, we already talked about the shifter. Shifter feels great. It does have a little bit of that 90s vagueness, although honestly, it's not even that bad. Gas pedal, cable throttle, right? Yeah. It does feels pretty good, about how you'd expect for cable throttle. Brake pedal, guessing there's probably some work to be done with the brakes. It feels okay, but it's not very confidence inspiring. I'm gonna guess that's specific to this car, and the regular one probably, felt like a normal brake pedal. The clutch in here too feels pretty good. It's kind of linear. The bite point's pretty obvious. This car's not very hard to drive. Do you have an aftermarket clutch in here?
No, it's stock.
Okay, so stock clutch can handle the power. That's pretty awesome. A lot of cars, when you start throwing more horsepower, then the stock clutches just disintegrate.
And like I said, the rear steering's kind of intermittent, but a lot of people, they make like delete kits for them, because this car does have a couple leaks in the power steering lines because it goes up and down the car.
Right.
And you can't buy the lines brand new.
Right.
So a lot of people just delete them. They just start deleting.
So they don't have to, find replacements.
So it's like different control arms in the rear. It's like the kit's about $200, but you're saving yourself a lot of aggravation.
Right, and that's the thing too. Once these cars that have all this tech get older and older, it becomes a lot harder to upkeep them. Especially something like this. It was a niche platform. A specific car. They did make them for 10 years, but it's still by this point they're all approaching 30 years old, even the newest ones, and finding those parts can be really difficult and make it a lot harder to live with. Oh, third gear there. Did not grind, but I felt it. It didn't really want to. Yeah, a little bit of a trick to get this gearbox right.
So in 95 or 96, they went to a 6-speed transmission.
Okay.
I might be mistaken. It might be 97, but it makes it a lot more of a driver car, especially a Grand Touring car. If you're doing like the longer distance driving.
Right. Yeah, I get you that lower RPM. And we haven't touched fifth yet in this video. We'll try it towards the end. But there's a common problem with these. Dan was telling me that fifth gear and basically all of these just went bad. They started grinding earlier in their life. You showed me a dealer sheet, yeah.
Like just quite a few of these, the original owners, this car was bought local near Fowlerville, and he had every time he brought it in, it seemed like he was making the complaint, fifth gear was just always grinding, and the service department always just said, yep, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just normal.
So messed up.
Seeing if I can find the actual paper that's so this one, hard to get into fifth gear.
Yeah, hard to get into fifth gear. And what mileage was that at?
This was at 115.
115,000 miles in, was it 2003?
Yeah, 2003, August 20, 2003.
Yeah, it was already having that problem. So unfortunately, another issue that plagued a lot of these, which as they're now older and the parts are harder to find, will just plague them even more. That feels great. I like this power number a lot in this car. You can have a lot of fun. You know, you're not overly breaking the law, but it's still enough to kind of make you go, ah, it's a quick car. Wow, these things are awesome. You know what's funny though too? A lot of cars when they get turbocharged, they sound a lot different from their NA counterparts, but this actually sounds a lot similar to the NA one, just we got the added turbo noise. So I remember driving that now for a couple of years ago. This engine has a very distinct like peak once it gets up close to 7,000, and I kind of now I heard it there on that last pull. This thing's a lot of fun, man.
It's a pretty fun car. Compared to my Camaro, it's probably has more power than my LS3 Camaro.
Yeah. Really tried to have it not grind there, but just the tiniest bit when it was going in. No avoiding it?
No.
Nope. It is pretty long though. I've been on the highway. It's probably a nice cruising gear as far as RPM goes, fuel economy.
Cruise control still works, so that's very notorious for an old Japanese car that they never work.
Oh, you got one that works.
Yeah.
Maybe
I put that together, I was like, holy shit, it actually works.
Wait, maybe it's because it's the American counterpart.
Yeah.
American.
It's a Mopar.
Mopar, no car. We finished test driving the 1992 Dodge Stealth RT Turbo. Is Turbo part of the trim name?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so it's an RT Turbo. That's the correct term.
Twin turbo.
RT Twin Turbo. I would actually say this exceeded my expectations in a lot of ways. I knew it was going to be stable and planted, but it really feels like a modern car in the sense that when you're coming out of corners and you put your foot down, it just, the all-wheel drive puts down the power so well. You know, Mitsubishi sort of, I guess, got a knack for all-wheel drive systems in cars. This is kind of the precursor to all the modern cars and how they feel now. And I can imagine 1992, you know, driving this thing around like you were. There was nothing else like it.
These things were not cheap back in the 90s, so MSRP for this car was about 52, 53 grand. So 91, 92, that was like almost 100 grand. That was like the Hellcat of the 90s.
Yeah, right. The Hellcat of the 90s, exactly. I'm going to start calling these that.
Yeah.
Hellcat of the 90s. I love it. And with that, let's go ahead and give the Dodge Stealth RT Twin Turbo a score. It scores here on our list against other similar cars from the same era. The Dodge Stealth RT Twin Turbo is a cool car, no doubt made cooler with the extra horsepower. However, the lack of parts availability, especially considering how much tech there is, will make the ownership experience not as amazing. You can still own one reasonably, but you have to be prepared and ready for that inevitability. Despite that, this car is still a cool piece of automotive history and was ahead of its time. Even today, over 30 years later, it's still a great driving experience.